Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Okay, welcome. The topic is the role of data science in risk management, especially from a cyber perspective. And I'd like to begin with each panelist giving about a minute of their own views. What has changed? How much has cyber come into your portfolio of risk management? What has increased? What is the has the pandemic got more changes? What do you see the future? Just your few initial thoughts, and I've got a question of to take you through that. So, Shalini, starting with you, what are your perceptions? How has cyber influenced your decision making to your board from your risk perspective?
Yeah. Thank you so much, and a very good afternoon to all the panelists and all the viewers over here. So I'll just spend a couple of minutes in just telling you about how things have changed in the post-pandemic environment, and also for us as a new entrant into the housing finance market. So no, we've just launched our business. We are pretty new in this area right now, and having launched in this kind of an environment. So what we are seeing is that we have launched with a heavy reliance on technology. So there is a lot of technology adoption which has happened. The customer journeys have been designed. They are all designed basis keeping technology and minimum human intervention. So that is something which is the approach behind launching various programs and schemes for the consumers. So I think what I feel is, if I look at the entire space, the banking space, the consumer banking space, I think the consumer banking is getting redefined today. The existing digital transformation programs, they've all accelerated. So earlier, every organization was talking about going digital. There were, long-term plans for getting into the digital space. But now all we find is that all of these have been accelerated within all the organizations. There's a renewed excitement about modernizing the tech infrastructure, and all the low priority investments, they've kind of been sidelined. And this has also been supported by the regulator to a large extent, because now what we find is, in the past, the objections to delivering technology solutions they are kind of, they are being overcome now. For example, you have e-signatures, you have video KYCs, there are higher limits for contactless payments. They've all been enabled by the regulator. So these are certain things which have actually, enabled the adoption of technology. And as new players like us, we have launched the programs along with these digital initiatives. So we are yet to see the risks, but of course, we know what kind of risks we are getting into. And as a CRO, and I'm sure all the panelists over here also, we understand what kind of risks technology can bring us to, and all of us are ensuring that we are prepared for it, especially with respect to data usage, data sharing. The cyber risk is definitely now coming into the scope of the CRO as far as the enterprise risk management is concerned. So it's a very, very important part of risk management now. And I think the players who've already been there in the industry, they would have seen some kind of risk already being, getting thrown up. And I think what we are doing is we are preparing ourselves that, going forward as we build our businesses, we are better prepared. So
Thank you so much, Shalini. I think I like the way you actually summarize it, saying you're launching with a new reliance on technology. The excitement is renewed about modernizing the tech infrastructure, and the earlier objections have been done. I'll go to Vishesh. Vishesh, you are an old hand in this. How do you contrast with what Shalini has said? She's in a new entrant, but from your perspective, with so many years of banking, has things changed for you, or the same what they were 3 years back or before the pandemic? You're on mute, Vishesh.
I'll give you my perspective as a part of public sector banks, where we are having a lot of legacy systems, and we are in the process of transformation. Like we are having technology adoption at the back end level, but now the front end are being technology driven. So we are having a lot of new technologies like cloud, mobile, IoTs adoption being done at this level, and too many APIs, IoTs, mobiles, and access points are putting the banks in a new risk and threats. So security in IoT devices, including the smartphones, are not up to the level, you all know, and it is putting the entire organizations in risk. So we are facing a lot of challenges as far as mobile devices, the mobile banking, internet banking are concerned. A lot of frauds started happening, and during the pandemic, with the increase of digital channels adoption and increase of usage, a lot of there was multifold increase in the number of transactions, and so the frauds also started increasing. So we are having in our bank a enterprise-wide fraud risk management solution, and with the adoption of UPI, the number of instances has increased so much that it started giving troubles. So we have to shift this entire solution on a cloud so that it can give continue to give the better results. And we are putting up more and more cloud adoption in future, because a lot of data sciences, the techniques, the artificial intelligence are going to be used in future, and that will just Shalini was saying that it has accelerated the adoption of digital techniques. So that is going to create a lot of challenges in future, what I can see.
Thanks, Vishesh. Like the way you said, you come from a legacy scenario of public sector, and you may have a challenge of upgrading, and especially your journey to the cloud. I'll move to Sumit. Sumit, from a comparatively, relatively a newer bank, what challenges you face from a cyber and a risk perspective, and how did you overcome that?
Thanks, Burgess. Good afternoon, everybody. A couple of points. One, as a bank, we were on the path of our digital journey even pre-COVID and pre-crisis that we face as a bank. So the COVID actually only helped us come back on feet in terms of the digital processes, digital transactions. The one challenge which I'm sure all of us as the industry would continue to face is the consumer expectation, consumer behavior. The customer, partly COVID. Shalini mentioned, Mr. Srivastava mentioned, the customer does expect delivery on his mobile, on his laptop, on his computer, not knowing as to what are the pitfalls that he needs to be careful about. The amount of malicious apps that the guy will may end up downloading on the mobile may actually end up constraining the delivery of services, or the passwords getting hacked, or and the likes of it. There is little control that we can. The fraudsters, as somebody was saying, actually is maybe a couple of steps ahead of the organized banking space always. So we just have to keep playing a catch-up game and keep on employing more and more tools to try and prevent possible hacking, possible information leakage. There are different kinds of challenges. There are situations where the number of e-hacks being attempted on banks across the world, whether ransomware or it's anything else, is actually increased big time. Right from Australian Stock Exchange to Brazil, you keep hearing it all over the place. And if that's not enough, you also had pre-COVID, during COVID, the whole partnership, third-party vendors, which not in the classical vendor space, but more like partners in the fintech partnerships. All of that also means you are actually exposing yourselves and your platforms to third parties. The risks which seep in from their systems onto yours may be undefined at this point in time. So there are a lot more of investment, awareness, caution, which will keep on going. And I was mentioning somewhere else, the CRO of any financial institution, typically one used to look at credit as the single largest risk in the institution, which is fairly, I would say, a well-known. It could still be the single largest, which is a well-known risk. The non-credit risk items, which is the cybersecurity or its information security or its operational risk, that is really increasing, and which will go through its own cycle time, I guess, to be able to identify that, tap it, and move on.
Thank you, Sumit. So well said that CRO's first job was a credit risk, a biggest risk, but still well known, well balanced, well predictable. And now cyber completely unknown. You don't know how much it is. Little control, fraudsters ahead of the organized banking. The amount of malware apps constrain delivery of services. Well said. Thank you so much for your inputs, Sumit. I'll move to my friend Sundar Krishnan, great old colleague. I can see him laughing. Sundar, you've been slightly longer in the game. You were earlier a CISO and migrated to CRO, and you upped your ante. Have you caught up, or you are still agreeing with Sumit that the percentage of cyber is still less, or in a CRO's portfolio, the cyber percentage has greatly increased, and what else has decreased then?
No, so cyber risk is increasing as we speak, and CISO reports to me in my own company. Also part of the cyber insurance committees, cyber security committee of the regulator as an advisor. So I'm actively involved in cyber security. I see it as an emerging risk. I used to see it as an emerging risk, and it is an emerging risk even now. Thanks to digital transformation that most of the insurance company launched about 4 to 5 years back, it's still on, and it's in a big way. And thanks to pandemic, it is caught up in a big way. So what has happened is the kind of importance that is given to cybersecurity has gone up. It's now enabler, and it's part of the digital bandwagon. So you have to deal with access from remote locations. You have to deal with pushing the corporate policies to devices, remote locations, and also to deal with digital transactions as we go up, and digital risk management, and also many other emerging topics. As you would see, even regulations are emerging on the social media side. How do we tackle that, and how do we deal with it? So Chief Risk Officer now is no longer only the credit risk, market risk, operations risk. Cyber security used to be a small part of operations risk. Now it's become a big giant. It's gone out of that circle, and then it's become a circle by itself. So now, in fact, people are talking about dividing even cyber risk into two parts: social media risk separate, and then or digital risk management, and then the rest of this risk management. So it's so specialized and challenging and emerging and ever emerging. So people, process, technologies have all undergone a change thanks to digital transformation. Sorry, I'm not able to hear you, Burgess.
I'm saying I like the way you put it. Cyber was a part of a circle risk. Now it's a whole circle by itself. So thank you for that. Shailendra, your views. I'll save the best for the last from a perspective before I go to Ved. But
Yeah, so I think one good thing is I echo all the views of the previous speakers, and I'll just comment.
Something new.
Yeah, so so as Sundar said, I think last few years have been years of digital transformation for the life insurance industry, and in that process, to accelerate the whole effort, we have been tying up with a lot of fintechs, with a lot of startups, and the extent of points of failure from a cybersecurity perspective have increased manifold. And when I say that, I mean vendor, I mean employees, I mean your digital devices, your APIs, your partners through whom you are selling, and getting a handle of all of it. And you are as strong as your weakest link. So trying to ensure that you connect all of them together. And obviously, we have a past also, which would be our 300, 400, 500 branches through whom we operate and which are on our network. So I think it is both simple and it is very complex. It's a VUCA world also, but we are vulnerable even to a small reputational risk incident at some far-flung corner of the country. Or with some vendor where you have cut corners when you're trying to enter into an agreement, or when you're doing some sort of a prototype or some sort of a small exercise with that vendor. So I think cyber to that extent, and I think risk has now, especially post-COVID and some of the frequently occurring black swan events, it's now gone to operational resilience as to how are you testing your organization in terms of adapting to the changing normal. So risk is now very much integrated as part of your strategy, your operating model. And cyber, I think now your CISO cannot just be a technical person. He or she needs to be a functional person and needs to be as integrated as part of the strategy making as the CRO would be. So that's my 2 cents of input.
Thanks for your 2 cents of input. I think they make sense. I like the part where you mentioned clearly, Shailendra, that CISO has to move from technical to a functional expert. You're engaging startups. It's both simple yet very complex. Frequently occurring black swan events are now moving to operational resilience. Shalini, a question to you. You said you are the head start from a perspective of new digital. You don't have the legacy systems. Do you think some of the painful events of banks, which they have probably been, legacy systems, as was mentioned earlier by Vishesh and other people, how can you utilize the smartness of being completely native digital and avoid the mistakes that earlier of your colleagues would have made? What would be your thought process? How do I give my company the advantage and not go through the same learning, curve and painful curve? Can I do something smarter, better, faster than what your colleagues in the panel have done? And what would that be?
Sure. So, had we launched this business earlier, a couple of years back, maybe, as some of our friends over here have spoken about, that the role of CISO is very, very strong. It's just not, technical in nature. It's got to do, a lot of familiarization with the business nuances is also very, very important. So we've ensured that we've put, CISO in place while launching the business. We've also ensured that as a part of our risk management committee, we discuss about the cyber risks. We have, formed our policies around it. We have ensured we've actually kind of, found out, basically we've noted down what kind of risks an organization can face and what kind of risks have been faced by the organization in the past and how we have mitigated them. So we've kind of built, those kind of mitigants in our policies, in our execution, in our while we are building our digital channels, digital journeys. So we've kind of ensured that we are protected. But again, this is a very, very dynamic world, and the fraudsters are much more ahead of us in the game of the entire information security and in terms of implementation of these schemes. So we are, keeping our eyes and ears open. We are ensuring that we have all the firewalls, all the mitigants, all the, the necessary controls which are there, they are built in. And the rest is, it's an ongoing thing, and there have to be a lot of controls. It has to be, kept on reviewing. The review and the control mechanism has to be a very, very continuous in nature. And that's something which we are, cognizant of, and we have put it, in all our policy documents, in all our discussions. So it's a very, very important risk, which is being discussed in all our committees as well.
Thank you so much. And Ved, you heard everybody now, right? What would your learnings be? You heard Shalini say how she's gone from a new age technology to Vishesh Swing is working from legacy systems, to Sundar mentioning on a different scale of the circle itself being changed. What is your perspective on the risk management quantification for cyber perspective?
So, my perspective is based on the current interaction with most of the customers that I am managing in the current role, which is where it's coming to safeguard the data, which has become the critical asset for organizations today. As Shalini called it out, that the approach related to the perimeter security and putting the controls are happening. But trust me, the focus has now moved much beyond the perimeter security controls, and data has become the new perimeter. What you are doing first to ensure that security of the data has become a much focused area, both from perspective of avoiding the data breaches that have become the new norm today, as well as with the regulations coming across data privacy, which would be really be a game changer in terms of the way our data is being flowing across the organization. And what are you doing to ensure that you have a consistent approach across the organizations in terms of managing the life cycle of data, because that's something where the expertise that we bring in terms of getting engaged early in identifying where the sensitive data is, then you ensuring you how to protect that sensitive data, bringing the right kind of technology techniques, maybe it encryption, tokenization, data masking, whatever be it, and then ensuring it that how you are able to maintain the control for the audit compliances which are applicable to you. So having said that, I think there is very much a requirement for having an approach that helps you to secure the data across all your environment, which includes your physical, virtual, and cloud and big data. And it basically helps you to keep the distributed data safe and manage it centrally. So that's which would be my 2 cents to contribute.
Thank you. You said manage centrally. I'm going to throw an open question. Your boards will keep on asking you, look, you are CISO and you come every year and you ask for a huge budget. And because of COVID, you put more of a threat and you ask for more budget, but yet you got hacked or yet company. Sundar, I can see you laughing. Sundar, what is the concept? What is the answer? You have concepts like value at risk, VAM, and enterprise risk management concepts of residual risk. Do you use any of those or that's just jargon? Is it really practical value at risk or enterprise risk or residual risk to a board, or it's just in a philosophical sense?
I use the enterprise risk and the residual risk to the board. We look at also trends, emerging trends. I have a dashboard actually, and then not only I do lead indicators, lag indicators, I do lead indicators also, and then look at what could go wrong and what could, what needs to be done. But when it comes to budget, it is always tough. It's not just easy. So if you have proxy filters, say for your perimeter, of course, security is beyond perimeter now. It's pushed to devices, remote corners, and more importantly, business partners. And then how do you push VPN and say I have a Zscaler in my proxy filter? How do I push that into the so many scores of employees in the vendor's company? How do I control that? And that's the big challenge. And so investments that you could put up is going to be mind-boggling. And is the vendor expected to be up the ante, up the curve, which is of course agreed, but it doesn't work out that way. When you go and do a risk assessment, you find the vendor is also doesn't have a basic security sometimes. So it's tough because of cost reasons and budget reasons. And then you say revenue is same, so budget has got to be same. It's never same, especially when it comes to cyber security. It is going up like crazy. Every year, the cost of cyber security goes up. There's no doubt about that. Because you've got increasingly adopt newer technologies, newer processes.
Thanks, Sundar. But the question is, you said revenue same, budget goes up. Sorry, someone's echoing. On mute, please, everyone.
No,
yeah.
But
if you still get hacked, is there a concept like residual risk or value at risk that if you spend so many $1 million, yet you got risk? How do you explain the concept?
Yeah, so what you need to do is look at threats, vulnerabilities, and risks, and then measure them, scale them, and also give a number to that, saying we could lose so much data. Reputation risk, of course, can't be measured. The damage that you could cause. I mean, there are ample number of incidents to deal with, like Target and so many other companies that have faced hacking attack. Even our own nation, HDFC Bank, you saw what happened to the shares and what happened to them in terms of the digital risk management or digital technologies or digital business that they wanted to launch. They were asked to go slow by the regulator. So you have a problem there. So this is a good enough example to show that if you have a problem, if you have a data hacking attempt being done, and you need to, and also in terms of availability of data, in terms of resumption, resilience of systems, you have a challenge there. You will have to demonstrate that my systems are not been up and running. So you can measure that. So we have lots of measurements on my dashboard on risk measurements, several. And all this, when I add up, it aggregates to a big, huge number. And that's how we get the budgets, of course. So you've got to scare people to get the budgets. That's the only way.
Shalini, Somi, Pishesh, anybody else? Value at risk, residual risk. Yeah, Vishesh, go ahead.
In fact, in our bank, in fact, the CISO is not reporting to CRO. So entire previously he was reporting to me, but now a separate vertical has been created, and a lot of emphasis has been given on cyber security. The board level meetings are generally focused. A lot of time they focus on this aspect only, and budget is not a challenge right now, because everybody understands the extent of risk that cyber security can pose to the bank. So that is very good thing that is happening. In fact, a lot of board level nominations are being done for these type of trainings, which are conducted by a lot of cyber security experts. So that is also giving a lot of comfort to the risk management as far as
So
budgeting.
who does the CISO report into now? If earlier it was you, now it reports into-
He is directly reporting to the full-time directors.
Board risk committee.
Yes,
Directly to the board risk
yes,
committee.
board risk committee. Yes.
Okay. What about cyber insurance? Would that perspective change because you have a residual risk? Shailendra, you said yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you need to cover yourself against because you really don't know what's gonna come up in the near future, and you're seeing incidents increasing every day, year on year. You're seeing cyber terrorism incidents. You suddenly after COVID, your entire organization is accelerating its digital efforts. So cyber insurance is a no-brainer. You need to have that in place. How do you value it? How do you quantify it? It's still, there are a lot of discussions which we have with the insurers in terms of how would you would arrive at the risk cover. But I think largely it should cover all your assets. It should cover your data, the value of your data, and there are some means and measures. As regards cyber, we have a risk appetite in place where we try to quantify. And then obviously residual risk. But there will be incidents even after putting in the best of the tools, even after putting in all the measures. I think the question is, do you have the resilience to bounce back? And do you have the confidence to continue your business? So an analogy could be a Formula One racing car. You need to put in the brakes, but the driver would go at full speed only knowing at the back of the mind that there are brakes. And I think that's what your cyber program would do. It may not always prevent any incident. It could still happen. It is always a catch me if you can. You're still running after budgets. You're still trying to do things the proper way. And cyber criminals don't need that. They can do things in a jiffy. They can do things in a very low cost. A ransomware attack can be done in a very small cost. So you might still feel incidents, but it is how well do you convince your board about it, and how serious is your board and management about it. And again, that links to your strategy, that if you have a very strong digital strategy, which you don't want to fail, then obviously you'll have to put in all the rail guards, all the perimeter controls around it. And cybersecurity is one part of it.
Thank you so much. Sumit, you were saying something on the value at risk concept?
So I wanted to just give an analogy of the traditional credit markets. Typically you have a credit is still a fairly well-defined, well-boxed, relatively known risk, which has been there for donkey's years, right? And you have an army of people, systems, analytical reports, whole lot of tools to try and predict NPAs and frauds and stuff like that. Yet you can't control that. You will have instances where you end up with NPAs. You will have instances where you end up with frauds. You will have instances where you have quick mortality. All of this happens despite having an army of people, and the number of people engaged in a credit risk management profile are going to be outstripping anything to do with IT, InfoSec, or under CISO or anything like that. So I just wanted to give this analogy. I said no matter whatever controls you put in place, I don't think the idea is to bring the risk down to zero. The idea is only to manage the risk. End of the day, most of us financial institutions are in the business of taking risk. That is the baseline. You can't eliminate risk. All that you can do is to try and do a lot of the steps to try and control and manage the risk. One last piece before we move on is you mentioned about cyber insurance. And I'll just pick up one statement from Sundar and one from Challenger. Insurance is a post facto event. At best you control the losses at your end. What doesn't you get controlled is the reputation damage which happens along with one or two incidents which happen in the remote corner of the country, and you are done with. I mean, to get a customer confidence back in, to say, now it's all fine, it doesn't work like that. I mean, so once you can get cyber insurance for some of the losses that you do, but I don't think anything can repair your reputation. So
Completely agree.
it's a tough one, honestly, and it's an ongoing battle. And to my mind, it's an evolving space, and it will take a while before it comes to a maturity, both the industry, even the understanding or appreciation of the risks involved. And there will always be a tug of war between the business teams, between the risk controllers and the budget finance guys and the board as four corners of a box, because everybody will have their own constraints. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much. What about third-party risk? Because you may have an attack from third parties and you can have that security. Shalini, your perspective, as third parties connect to you, do you think they bring a new area of risk which may be beyond your
Yes.
control?
Yes, certainly. I mean, third parties have always been, having their own risk, and that is the reason why we've been having these outsourced policies, documenting the various kind of risks which we have as and when we outsource our processes. But definitely, when we are having so many API connectivities and we are having so many third parties, we are depending on so many third parties in giving our offerings. There's an increased amount of risk, and with respect to the kind of security systems they have in place, and how much, again, they have their insurance in place or not, and whether the securities have been tested or not. That's a very, very important risk which we factor whenever we partner with any third party. And with the increasing APIs, this is definitely a very big risk. And the kind of NDAs you have with them, the kind of authentications which you build in your, the interfaces which you build, all these have to be really, taken with a lot of detailing, and a lot of controls need to be built. But definitely, this is a very, very important risk which we also perceive.
Sundar, from your perspective, third-party risk especially?
It's quite important, and we actually do, in addition to what Shalini mentioned in terms of getting the legal contracts and the access checks that we do on the third parties, we also do audits based on risk-based calendar of third parties. Now, there are, of course, two kinds of third parties.
Point-in-time audits really helpful.
Yeah, very. So, in fact, more than audit, it's a risk review. The CISO himself goes there and does a risk review very keenly, as if it's his own home and his own company, and then says, okay, this is not done, this needs to be done, and then we go behind them saying that get it done. It's there in our action tracker. So that helps actually round the clock. Again, of course, you don't have to cover people who are not connected. Only those who are connected to you, who have APIs or interfaces or integrated.
Sure. So what I'm hearing from the panel is the threats have changed, the threats have accentuated. If you can go on mute, everyone, please. But we're still using what we thought was the same techniques earlier, the same risk, the same third party, the same board discussions. And I'd like to push this panel to say, what is new that we can adopt? What is the probably in West or some other leading banks, maybe the world's best banks, are they doing something new with the action to the risk, or is it just the same old techniques of, and they're not bad, they're really good, they're time tested, but given digital acceleration which has happened, given cloud native digital first companies going through, what more can you as CROs do to push your own CISOs and cyber in your respective companies as the risks have gone through the roof? Open question.
Yeah, so there are emerging tools now that are available, which you could run to all those who are connected. And then you have workflows and dashboards readily available. So it's more real time. You don't wait for a 3-year risk-based curve to go and do a review. It's more dashboard oriented, online, real time. And this is what the new thing that has come in the third party risk assessment.
Okay. Sumit?
Yeah, so I must add on to what Sundar just mentioned. There are tools which are getting available to try and track the vulnerability data leakage from the vendors, which is some kind of a scorecard being available at a regular frequency. And as more and more companies, more and more participants start adopting that, it becomes a very useful tool to try and sit with the vendors on a table to understand as to why is your score increasing, why is it so low a score, and it should be let's say more than 750 or something like that, and it at least brings them to try and explain as to what are they doing to improve that. And second, just to articulate what you just also asked, the amount of risk seeping in through the third party is actually considerable, given the fact that the number of patches which is being deployed, being applied in various systems, there are vulnerability or malware being infused through the third party patches as well. I mean, it's a ever-ending game to try and do who catches them first kind of stuff. But I agree with you. It's a very tightrope walk. And as the new tech evolves, as the new platforms evolves, as the new insights evolves, the idea is to try and do little predictive measurement rather than reactive.
Sure. One last question before I summarize, and then I can ask you all to give 30 seconds each. How do you people keep yourselves updated? You may have a CISO, it's his job to be updated. But if I ask an introspective question, Shalini, Sumit, Vishay, Sundar, Ved, Shalindra, how would you keep yourself up to the curve in cyber and digital risks vis-a-vis the old tech concepts of normal risk? What is your learning to be ahead of the curve, or at least be with the curve?
So I think one thing which we pick up is we have a few ethical hackers in our team. And the most important thing which I keep on doing personally, so that I don't become outdated or I don't understand some of the concepts and I can help them push for their budgets or any other needs, is interact with the guy on the ground in the field, which is our wonderful team of ethical hackers. The second bit which I do is I keep on meeting vendors. I keep on meeting various consultants just to know what's happening, what's evolving in the space. You need not every time have an assignment, but so Burjis, that's where you could also come in. We need to meet more often for coffee. We do a lot of networking within us as a forum. So definitely me, Sundar, we are on hot dial. We continuously speaking, understanding, getting Sundar's experience. He's quite experienced in the field, cross-functional experience. That's something which we do. And other than the technical concepts, I think you need to understand your business and smell the coffee on the ground as to what's happening. So, so it has to be a zoom in, zoom out. So you also need to go and meet your lowest sales force on the ground how are they masking my Aadhaar copies, my customers' Aadhaar copies, right down to the vendors, how are they handling the data. And these could be small vendors also. And you could be surprised seeing some document at the Raddi shop near your branch in Patna or something. So obviously you need to cover that also. And so it's a wide spectrum, but you need to be passionate about it. And you also need to have your board speak your language in a way. And that's where you need to keep on continuously engage with the board. Maybe make them paranoid if required of some of these incidents, but keep on chipping off the block. Just keep on involving them also in the whole thing.
I thought you might say attend more seminars like these. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Right?
I was about to say that.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah. Anybody else? How do you keep yourself updated to this ever-ending surge of information, cyber threats?
So, but I guess the just to elaborate what you were mentioning and what Chandra was mentioning, I actually come from a business background. I've been in running a business for the last 16 years in Yes Bank, and prior to that in somewhere else. For me, the risk role is actually just about 6 months old. And in our case, just to be a technical correction, you mentioned CISO as he. In our case, it's a she. So the best way for me to learn is actually to invest more and more time. And I think I have a more than just simply a weekly session with my CISO, and that's where I also keep learning. And the second, exactly what Chandran mentioned, since I come from business, I have a fairly good pulse of people across the length and breadth of the country. And that kind of helps you feel as to what are the on the ground workaround people are figuring out how to manage the new controls, the new checks and balances. Operations team as to how are they ducking the new controls, maybe giving something else somewhere with the video KYC on. Is there some new picture capturing being happening somewhere and the likes of it? So nothing, but I don't think there's any exactly foolproof mechanism. But I guess the more you can cut across the chase and meet with people and have a pulse of the ground, that's the best way to do it.
I like this more you cut across the chase and meet people.
Right.
All right. Anybody else?
Other than what has been already covered, networking, forums, the other one is the RCA of events. When you read up events, you should do a root cause analysis of that. What could have gone wrong? What went wrong? Read up more and then find out. Actually, events teaches you a lot. What could go wrong? If you do a very detailed analysis, you really know what has gone wrong in that particular case. Then you go back and check in your own home. You will not notice, oh my God, I didn't check this. And then you plug those. So
Also, new trend is many boards are insisting on an industry expert from a cyber or tech perspective to be on your boards, asking the right questions. Do you all see that in your companies?
Yes.
Sumit? Okay.
yes,
Great. So you're seeing
Absolutely.
external specialists on cyber coming on your boards and asking those probing questions.
May I chip in? In fact, this is
Please.
a requirement from Reserve Bank also, that the board should have a specialist. So that is a requirement. But in most of the public sector banks, it is yet to take place. So we are waiting for any specialist to join our board, so that the discussion can be more fruitful. But it may take some time, I think.
I do some board sessions. I do some sessions where I actually teach the board members on what questions to ask. So I could share that with you. We do sessions in ISB where we do cyber war games and all that stuff. So great, I can get that.
the other thing is the research and the academicians. That's the field I think people ignore. We shouldn't do that. I think, especially PhDs in information security and people who've done a lot of work on information security.
All right. So questions to Sanaya. Can we have each panelist say last 30 seconds or 1 minute or for their views before we end? Do we have time, Sanaya? Jeevan, Sanaya, the moderators, do we have time for each panelist to round up their views?
Yeah, please.
So starting with Ved, from your perspective, you enjoyed the session. Anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, because so from my perspective, I think it is just to ensure that there is one approach which cuts across the technology with respect to managing and protecting your data. Now that can be right at where the data is created, which is at the application level, or where the data is being kept at rest, which could be the file server level, or where the data is being stored at the storage level. So this would be really required in terms of addressing the emerging threats and risks associated with the data breaches and the very recent threat attacks that we are seeing happening across the industry.
Thank you. Shailendra?
My piece of input is I think we need to predict what all technological trends and what all business disruptions could happen over the next 3 to 5 years and start preparing for it today. So a bit of crystal ball gazing today would be very essential, because it's kind of catch me if you can. We try to develop a cybersecurity framework, a program in line with our operating model, which is evolving or which is already planned under implementation. I think we need to be there as part of higher business planning in terms of where the organization needs to be there 3 years, 5 years down the line, and be there today, at least in the mind. So that's my thought on that.
Thank you. Sundar, your perspective?
Yeah, I think lesser than that, Shailendra has gone much ahead in future. I'm looking at emerging risks. I think as they emerge, maybe next 6 months. So as you know, cybersecurity is fast changing, and you need to be on top on emerging risks. Absolutely, and therefore the dashboards that I do for indicators for risk, I keep watching them and then try and plug the gaps. And discipline is very important. I just escaped the ransomware attack just because somebody down the line managed to change the setting, one setting. I managed to then go scot free or unscathed. So
So you got second life.
huh?
You got second life then.
Yeah. So that's the key. So we will have to be disciplined and collaboration. Name of the game is collaboration. We need to collaborate better with IT security. Last man down the line, very important.
Thank you, Sundar. If you can go on mute, there's an echo happening from your side. Sundar,
Yeah.
if you can go on mute. Thank you. All right, Vishesh, from perspective.
I think the risk of unknown will continue in future also, and that is the greatest risk that I perceive in operation as a part of operational risk journey. And I think we have to, going ahead, we have to go for advanced data security analytics to cope up the risk posed by the digital transformation. And that is going to be a futuristic thing, but that has to come.
Thank you so much, Sumit.
So I guess there's 2 points, Burgess. One is, the whole, most of the activities increasingly is going to be cloud-based for sake of scalability, efficiency, and so on and so forth. And I guess a large amount of attention span is going to be to focus on how do we manage the cloud-related risks coming in, could be shared clouds and the likes of it. And the second is the number of logs which are going to be created out of more and more digital usage. How do we have real-time analytical tools to be able to track as to which logs are not in sync and which is a early warning signal to be able to tap either it's a data breach, data privacy breach, or it's a external hacking coming in or the likes of it.
Thank you, Shalini.
Yeah, I think most of it is already covered by the esteemed panelists over here. What I would like to focus on is, the early warning. I mean, the way we have it in our, risk and analytics in terms of predicting the losses and all. So we need to have some early warning models in data security field as well. And need to put more emphasis over there, have some dedicated team working on it, and keep on identifying and keep on doing the RCA, that is very, very critical to understand where you are going wrong, so that things don't get repeated later on and you can fix your issues on time. So I think these are some things that, because otherwise it's going to be a very, very challenging world, and because it is changing so much, the world is so dynamic, and no one actually predicted pandemic. So it's very difficult to predict, but uncertainty is going to remain, and we have to just find a ways of keeping ahead of the various risks which can happen in the future, and where we can wherever we are exposed. So that's something I think which we'll have to continue.
Thank you, Shalini. Guess everyone's spoken. I'll just sum up some of the nice quotations that people have spoken. I do that always. Shalini, you mentioned early warning signals, leak and lag indicators, what Sundar also mentioned. Uncertainty will always remain. You said you launched work with a new way of technology. So it's early warning, it's an early start. Renewed excitement about modernization, tech infrastructure, objectives to earlier adoptions like video KYC have been reduced. We had Vishesh mentioned as a public sector, he had legacy systems, UPI increased the instances of fraud and cloud adoption. We had amount of malwares, constant, which keep a constant cause a delay in the services. Little control, fraudsters always ahead of organized crime. Little more of investment. CRO used to always say it's cyber, look at credit, but now it's cyber is much more important. We had Sundar say earlier cyber was a portion of a circle, now it's a circle by itself. and cyber risk is social risk and digital risk. Sharendra mentioned engage fintech companies, both simple yet complex. That's what cyber is. Risk frequently occurring like a black swan events, and how to ensure the operational resilience part. CISOs moving from technical to functional as your 2 bits, as you mentioned. Fraudsters are more ahead of us. Security has made beyond the perimeter is what Ved mentioned. It's all encompassing. Lead indicators, lag indicators, what Sundar mentioned. Vendor has to up the ante. Revenue is same, but how can cyber increase? Again, that was taken up. Risk appetite, residual risk. Do we have the resilience to bounce back? Is the third one. Finally, we also had who catches them first, scorecard, smell the coffee, zoom in and zoom out, keep them churning, move and cut the chase, meet people, greater the risk of intruders, data security, analytics, RC of the events is what Sundar mentioned, last man down the line, crystal ball grazing, catch me if you can, be there from a 5-year period and think holistically, and the emerging risks. With this, I've summarized all the discussions, great points. Thank you so much, panel. I really enjoyed doing the moderation. I'm sure you enjoyed just thinking, speaking to fellow colleagues, getting updated, staying trendy on a Saturday evening. God bless, stay well, stay secure, take care.